Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's webcast on the Assisted Living Conversion Program and the Service Coordinator Program. My name is Ben Metcalf, and I want to welcome you on behalf of Acting FHA Commissioner and Assistant Secretary for Housing Carol Galante and Deputy Assistant Secretary Marie Head. We're very pleased that you can join us here today, and we're very pleased to have a chance to walk you through these two very important and very exciting programs. Just a little bit of logistics. The first webcast that you've just tuned into will focus on the Assisted Living Conversion Program. It will last approximately an hour. It will then be followed by a second webcast, which will start at 3:30, which will focus on our Service Coordinator NOFA program. Both of these notices of funding availability, which provide money out to affordable housing owners and operators and communities across America, are a very important milestone in our delivery of affordable housing resources. They both reflect a very holistic vision of what it is that HUD does in terms of making it easier for residents and owners to service the needs of their residents as they age in place or encounter disabilities day to day. They both come from a notion that housing has to be more than just a place where people live. It has to be a place that also serves as a foundation to help improve the quality of life. That idea is reflected in HUD's strategic plan, and it also serves as the underlying notion for why we do as much work as we do with our counterparts at the Department of Health and Human Services to make sure that our programs are aligned with investments coming out of the healthcare system. I will note in particular the Assisted Living Conversion Program has undergone some very significant changes this year, as you'll hear about later this afternoon. These come from new authorities that were provided to HUD under the Supportive Housing Investment Act of 2010. And they come from the reality of a healthcare system that's increasingly working to deploy institutional level services directly into the community without the need for licensure in every case. We are thrilled to be able to update our Assisted Living Conversion Program to fit that new reality of a more nimble healthcare system and to better deliver affordable housing resources to suit the needs of states and local communities all across the country. So with that, I welcome you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your interest. I wish you good luck in your applications. And I will turn this webcast over to Katina Washington, who will walk you through the changes to this year's program and help you understand how to make a competitive application. Again, good luck and have a good day.
I would just like to make a quick correction. The Service Coordinator webcast will begin at 2:30, not 3:30. Like we started, we're going to first start off with the Assisted Living Conversion Program. The Assisted Living Conversion Program was created to give lower income seniors who need more intensive services than provided in traditional housing for the elderly. The program also serves as an affordable option to nursing homes or institutional care. Oh, one quick thing before we move on into the presentation. I know in the email, it was stated that you'd be able to email questions during the presentation, but unfortunately, we won't be able to take any live questions. So at the end of the presentation, I have my contact information where you can email or call me directly if you have any questions. So let's continue the presentation. Let's kind of get into the purpose of the ALCP. It's to provide existing nonprofit owners of eligible multifamily development with a grant to convert some or all of the dwelling units in the project into an assisted living facility or service-enriched housing. Throughout the presentation, we're going to refer to as service-enriched housing as SEH. As mentioned earlier, there's been a significant change to the program. In 2010, the Section 202 Supportive Housing for the Elderly Act expanded the ALCP to make grants available for the conversion of service-enriched housing. Later on in the presentation, I will go into more detail about the service-enriched housing component. First, let's go into some details about the NOFA. This year, the NOFA announces the availability up to $25 million of ALCP grant funds with a maximum award amount of $5 million. The funds will be available for the physical conversion of eligible multifamily assisted housing projects or portions of the projects to assisted living facilities and/or service-enriched housing. The NOFA was posted March 13, 2012, and the application deadline date is May 15, 2012. Applications are to be submitted via grants.gov unless a waiver is granted. Paper applications must be submitted by the deadline date. Next, we're going to go through some of the program descriptions for ALCP. First, we're going to talk about what are our assisted living facilities. They're designed to accommodate frail elderly and people with disabilities who need certain support services to live independently. Some examples of supportive services in an ALF are personal care, transportation, meals, housekeeping, and laundry. Service-enriched housing, as mentioned earlier, is designed to accommodate elderly persons and people with disabilities with a functional limitation, meaning the person is unable to perform at least one activity of daily living. SEH is defined by statute as housing that makes available through licensed or certified third-party service providers supportive services to assist residents in carrying out activities of daily living. Some examples of the support services in the SEH are bathing, dressing, eating, getting in and out of bed or chairs, walking, going outdoors, using the toilet, laundry, home management, preparing meals, shopping for personal items, obtaining and taking medication, managing money, using the telephone, performing light or heavy housework, home health care services such as nursing and therapy. Now we're going to get in to cover the eligibility information. Only private nonprofit owners of eligible multifamily assisted housing developments specified in Section 683 2B, C, D, E, F, and G of the Housing Community Development Act of 1992 are eligible to apply for the Assisted Living Conversion Program. If your eligibility status changes during the course of the grant term, making you ineligible to receive the grant because of prepayment of the mortgage, sale or transfer of a physical asset, opting out of the Section 8 Housing Assistance Payment Contract, or transfer of the grant to a single asset entity, HUD retains the right to terminate the grant and recover funds are made available through this NOFA. Now let's get in of what type of projects are eligible. We have the Section 202 direct loans, the Section 202 PRACs, Section 515 projects with project-based Section 8 rental assistance, Section 221D3, and Section 236. Now let's talk about the ineligible applicants. Developments designed specifically for people with disabilities, for example, Section 811 projects would not be eligible for ALCP. Section 232 developments, property management companies and agents of property management companies, limited dividend partnerships, nonprofit public agencies, housing or other health-related facilities, existing insured or privately owned assisted living facilities, and commercial structures. Now let's get into the eligible conversion activities. Some of the eligible conversion activities include retrofitting to meet physical accessibility requirements of Section 504, the Fair Housing Act, Title III of American Disabilities Act, and any minimum property standards for accessibility and/or building codes, and health and safety standards for an ALF or SEH in that jurisdiction. Some examples of a Section 504 compliance are upgrading to accessible units with movable cabinetry, accessible appliance, sinks, bathrooms and kitchen fixtures, closets, hardware and grab bars, widening of doors, elevator upgrades, physical or mechanical upgrades to meet local codes, sprinkler systems, addition of hallway railings, and addition of medication storage and workstations. Some more eligible conversion activities include retrofitting to add, modify, and/or outfit common space for office or related space for an ALF or SEH staff, and retrofitting to upgrade a regular unit to an accessible unit for a person or family with disabilities being displaced from an accessible unit. The common space and/or office space can be used for service coordinator, file security, central kitchen or dining facility, upgrading a regular unit to an accessible unit for a person or family with disabilities being displaced from an accessible unit includes the portion of the project that is being converted to an ALF or SEH where another accessible unit is not available. Grant funds can also be used for the consultant, the architectural and legal fees. Vacancy payments will start from the start of conversion, limited to 30 days after the conversion. Please be aware, any excess reserved for replacement funds over $1,000 per unit in the project accounts that are not approved for another use at the time of application to HUD under this NOFA are considered available funds and must be applied toward the cost of the conversion activities. Now we're going to move into the threshold requirements. The threshold requirements are requirements applicants must meet in order to be eligible for funding under this program. First, we have being an eligible applicant, following your DUNS requirement, not requesting more funds than advertising, resolving any outstanding civil rights matter, active registration with the central contractor registration, having your commitment and funding support letters included in your application from the appropriate funding organization and the appropriate licensing agency, complying with your statutory requirements, meeting the minimum size limits in the application, and the missing exhibits requirement. I have a note for you. Currently, the CCR, which is the Central Contractor Registration System, is experiencing a backlog, so register early to avoid any delays in your application. I'm going to cover more in detail the commitment and funding support letters. The commitment and support letters must be submitted by the deadline date of the application. Indicate that the ALF or the ACH units, facilities, meals and supportive services are designed to meet the needs of the residents, and you must show a firm commitment for the funding of the meals and the services. If you're seeking an ALF license, you need to indicate that the project proposed will meet the licensing requirements of the appropriate state or local agency. You also have to indicate that the appropriate agencies have reviewed the supportive services plan and provided comments as appropriate. Please note that if you have a current or existing commitments or licensing that is not amended or will be amended to include the proposed units, HUD may reject your application. Here's the list of the program. Here I'm going to briefly cover the program requirements. I'm going to go into details about the meals and support services requirements, the service enrich requirements, the ALF licensing requirements, the occupancy requirements, the meal requirements for ALFs, and service coordination. Here's a list of the program requirements which are explained in detail in Section 3E of the NOFA. Now on to the meal and supportive services requirement. In order to meet the meals and supportive service requirements, your supportive service plan, which is the SSP, must include how you intend to provide the services and coordination of the supportive services, which will be offered in the ALF or the ACH by the appropriate state or local organization which are expected to fund the supportive services. One copy of your SSP must go to each appropriate state or local service funding organization well in advance of your application deadline for appropriate review on whether the supportive services proposed are designed to meet the needs of the residents. As I talked about earlier, a little bit about the service-enriched housing, the SEH. But now we're going to get into the requirements, which are a little slightly different if you are applying than if you were applying as just an ALF. As an SEH, you must make available supportive services to assist the residents in carrying out activities of daily living, and you may do so through either a licensed or certified third-party service provider. Even though the SEH does not have to be licensed, the service provider must be licensed or certified by the appropriate local or state agency. I'm going to cover some more requirements about the SEH. It must include the position of a service coordinator, which may be funded as an operating expense of the property, which is further described in the NOFA, Section 3E3. You must provide a separate dwelling unit for residents, each unit must contain a full kitchen and bathroom. You must include common rooms and other facilities appropriate for the provision of supportive services to the residents of the housing. And you must provide residents with control over their health care and supportive services decisions, including the right to accept, decline, or choose services, and have the right to have the choice of their own provider. Now, if you're applying for this program under as an ALF, we have the ALF licensing requirement. If you're applying for an ALF, the project must be licensed, which is different than SCH. The SSP must be submitted to the appropriate licensing agency within the ALF jurisdiction. The licensing agency must approve the SSP and must certify that the ALF are consistent with the state and local laws and regulations. The ALF must be licensed and regulated by the state or local agency. Now we're going to talk about the occupancy requirements for both the ALF and the SCH. Your ALF must be licensed and must be available to qualify elderly persons, for elderly persons and persons with disability, consistent with rules and payment plans of the state which need and want the supportive services in order to remain independent and avoid premature institutionalization. Your SCH should be available to qualify elderly persons, for elderly persons, and persons with disabilities as well. The ALF or the SCH residents must be residents of the multifamily project and comply with the requirements applicable to the project. You cannot charge additional rent over what is charged to the residents in the non-ALF or the non-SCH portion of the project. And all admission to the ALF or the SCH portion of the project must be administered through the applicable project admissions office. Now, here's some more occupancy requirements, which are only for applicants who are applying for an ALF only. Persons accepted into an ALF must sign an admissions agreement. The ALF must provide room, board, and continuous protective oversight, CPO. CPO involves a range of activities and services for example, awareness by management and staff of the residents' well-being. Anyone moving into an ALF unit must agree to accept the board and services required for complying with state and local law and regulations. The ALCP has a meal requirement for projects converting to an ALF only. The facility must offer 3 meals daily. Residents with or without kitchens in units must adhere to the meal requirements imposed by the ALF, the state or local government. The meal plan must accommodate residents with special need diets for health and safety reasons and for religious beliefs and practices. For example, kosher, halal, vegetarian, or any special needs diets. I would like to briefly cover the admission requirements for the ALF and the SCH. Current residents have priority. Qualified persons on the waiting list have second priority. Qualified individuals or families in the community needing ALF or SCH service will be added to the project waiting list. Qualified disabled non-elderly persons needing assisted living services are eligible to occupy the ALF units or the SCH units on the basis as elderly persons, except for in Section 202 pracs. The very important part of the ALCP is ensuring residents have access to services, and the role of the service coordinator is instrumental in providing that piece. ALCP requires service coordination for linking residents of the ALF or the SCH to available services in the community. Projects funded under this NOFA must have sufficient service coordination in place to ensure that services are complying with licensing requirements and are available on an ongoing basis for residents. Remember that your application must describe your service coordination plan efforts. And you also can apply for a service coordinator grant funds. And if you're interested, please remember after this presentation, the next webcast at 2:30 will present the service coordinator program. Some more about the service coordinator requirements under ALCP. The ALF or SCH must be staffed either directly or indirectly as a result of coordination with local agencies depending on state regulations or local requirements. And service coordinators may also serve the non-ALF or the non-SCH portion of the project. Here's the list of some of the other requirements: non-discrimination. And non-discrimination, you have the Fair Housing and Other Civil Rights Laws, your federal physical accessibility requirements, Section 232 of the National Housing Act, your Davis-Bacon requirements and the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, ensuring the participation of small business, small disadvantaged business, and women-owned business, your limited English proficiency requirement, your equal protection of laws for faith-based and community organizations, accessible technology, effective communication, participation in HUD-sponsored program evaluation, OMB circulars and government-wide regulations applicable to financial assistance and environmental requirements. And all these are described in detail in the NOFA. Applications are to be submitted through grants.gov. On the slide is the number to the NOFA Information Center. If you need technical assistance with your application, you can contact grants.gov by phone or email. Additional information or documents are available on our website. Here we are under the application and submission information. This is the content and which should be included in your application. There are 11 exhibits that are required along with the application and other prescribed forms and certifications. You have Exhibit 1, which is the application for your assisted living conversion program. Exhibit 2, the evidence of nonprofit status and legal ability to operate an ALF or SCH program. Exhibit 3, community support. Exhibit 4, your evidence of occupancy. Exhibit 5 is your evidence of need for the project. Exhibit 6 is the narrative of physical construction aspect of the ALF or the SCH conversion. Exhibit 7 is description of retrofitting or renovations. Exhibit 8 is your zoning, Exhibit 9, supportive service plan, and Exhibit 10 is your project resources. And each of these exhibits are described in detail of what it provides under each subtopic for each exhibit in the NOFA. Then Exhibit 11 is your prescribed forms that you must complete. And here's a listing of them. I want to reiterate again that the application deadline date for receipt of the application via grants.gov is 11:59 and 59 on May 15, 2012. Applications must be received by the deadline date in order to be considered. Some funding restrictions for the program include cost of meals and supportive services are not covered. This program does not allow permanent displacement. Due to limited funds, this is a big one, amendment funds will not be provided under this NOFA. Applicants will not be awarded multiple grant funds. So now I'm going to get into some ineligible activities. This includes adding additional units, paying the cost of any necessary supportive services, purchasing or leasing any additional land, rehabilitating the project for items not related to an ALF or SCH, reducing the number of accessible units already in the project, permanently relocating residents out of the project, paying management fees, and covering the cost of activities not directly related to the conversion of the units in common space. Just to remember, applications submitted directly through grants.gov. Applicants need to complete the registration steps contained in the general section to successfully submit an application. An application submitted through grants.gov constitutes submission is an electronically signed application. Any request for a paper submission, you must submit a waiver to Carol J. Galante, the Acting Assistant Secretary for Housing, Federal Housing Commissioner. And here's the address included on the slide. Now I want to kind of get into the application review information, which includes the policy priorities and the rating factors. Applicants will undertake specific activities that will assist the department in implementing its policy priorities that will help the department in achieve its goals. This NOFA supports the HUD policy, capacity building, and knowledge sharing, and using housing as a platform for improving outcomes. For more information about the policy priorities, you can review the Section 1B of the General Section. In order to receive priority funding status, the logic model must include at least one set of outputs and outcomes for each of the policy priorities. Now I'm going to cover the rating factors. All ALCP applications that successfully complete technical processing using the rating factors set forth in the NOFA will be rated. Here's a kind of a quick list of the rating factors. I'm going to briefly describe each of them. Please pay careful attention as some of the sub-factors this year have changed. So pay careful attention. The capacity, rating factor 1, capacity of the applicant and relevant organizational staff is 20 points. You can receive 10 points for the time frame, supportive service experience 9 points, and policy priority, capacity building, and knowledge sharing 1 point. Your rating factor 2, which is your need and extent of the problem, is 20 points. You get need within the project 7 points, need within the market area 3 points, financial need 9 points, and connection with the consolidated plan 1 point. Rating factor 3, which is the soundness of approach, is 40 points. Meeting physical needs of residents is 12 points. Management operational plan related to supportive services, 12 points. Supportive services meeting needs of residents, 7 points. Service coordination, 7 points. Training and employing low-income persons, 1 point. Policy priority using housing as a platform for other outcomes, 1 point. Rating factor 4 is your leveraging resources, which is 10 points. Commitments for funding meals and supportive services, 4 points. Past performance, 2 points. Local organization support for conversion, 2 points. Local organization support for additional repair or retrofit, 2 points. Rating factor 5, achieving results in program evaluation is 10 points. This is where your logic model comes into play. Benefits to residents, 4 points. Practical solutions is 2 points. Viability is 2 points. And promoting autonomy, independence, 2 points. Now here we go on to the bonus points. You have 2 options. You can get 2 points for projects located in a RCEZ EC2 area, or you can get 2 points for applicants working with communities that receive the HUD fiscal year 2010-2011 Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant and or fiscal 2010-2011 HUD-funded Sustainable Communities Challenge Grant Program. Here's kind of some suggestions for preparing your application. Make sure you read the NOFA, including the general section, register early, assess residents' need for the ALF or the SEH. You need to make sure you make contact with the state and local providers and licensing agency, locate plans of original design, identify your architect, obtain documents from other organizations and governmental agencies as soon as possible, write crisply, be brief, showcase the strengths of your organization, keep HUD's rating factors in mind, application should be complete, accurate, and well organized. Make sure every exhibit is included with accurate information. Make sure every document has the required dates. Submit early to meet the receipt and validation requirements by the deadline date. And if you have any questions, I'm Katina Washington. I can be, my email is on the slide. I can be contacted at katina.x.washington@hud.gov, and my number is 202-708-3000. I know the email that went out with the invitation for the webcast, I had one question that come in we're going to address right now. The question was, for SEH programs, can you limit residency to persons who have limitations in at least one activity of daily living? Well, no, you cannot. SEH to residents are for residents. Let me read the question one more time. For SEH programs, can you limit residency to persons who have limitations in at least one activity of daily living? The answer is no, you cannot. The only limit there, the minimum, the functional limitation, meaning only one activity a daily limit, isn't a limit for an SEH. Residents, it just states that the NOFA means you have to qualify for an SEH, you have to meet at least a functional limitation, meaning you cannot perform at least one activity a daily limit. It's a minimum, not the threshold, not the maximum amount that a resident who does not meet that qualification can be to the program. Let me clarify that. What I'm saying is you cannot limit the SEH program only for those who have a functional limitation. It could be open to residents with more than one, who cannot perform more than one activity a day of living, but you can't limit it to just only those residents who can't perform at least one activity of daily living. The next question, why do SEH programs need to provide a letter from the agency that license ALF. In Exhibit 9, Section 7, acknowledging the proposed ALF units and their approval of the proposed ALF. Can we instead request acknowledgement of the proposed SCH units and their approval of the proposed service-enriched housing? Well, for Exhibit 9 and that section number 7, that applies to ALFs only. The SCH do not need to provide a letter from the agency that licensed ALF. Exhibit 9, Section 7 specifically states a support letter for each governmental agency that provides licensing for ALFs. So SCH would not provide any licensing, any letters from a licensing agency that provides licensing to ALFs. That wouldn't be necessary, but they do have to provide proof of licensing of the supportive services or certification of the supportive services that will be included in the SCH. That includes my presentation. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And up next.